Did AI just save Google from being broken up? Hello and welcome to another KuLAB. My name is Ku. This is our laboratory for learning. Thank you for joining us again for another business news breakdown. Today we're taking a look at the case of Google that had a ruling against it in the United States federal court. Google was tried under antitrust rules and they were about to be broken up. Google was about to be forced to sell their Chrome browser. But all of a sudden, AI may have changed the very nature of search engines. What happened? How did the market respond? And what might that say about monopolies like Google in the future? If you like this sort of content, be sure to like and subscribe. Let's go ahead and jump in to our next KuLAB. Okay, welcome to our article. Let's start by giving attribution to our author. Today we're taking a look at an article by Angela Palumbo. Okay, let's take a look at our headline. Alphabet stock jumps after judge issues limited remedies in Google monopoly case. So this headline gives us a lot of information. Alphabet stock. So Alphabet stock is the company that owns Google. If you remember about a decade ago, about 10 years ago, so the company is called Alphabet. They owned Google. So that stock jumps after judge issues limited remedies in Google monopoly case. So remedies is a legal term here. What Google has to provide, what Google has to do because they lost the case. So this was an antitrust case a few years ago where search engine providers, the United States federal government, sued Google under their antitrust regulation, which means Google had gotten so big they were a monopoly in internet search. The case went to court, Google lost, and now it's time to tell Google what they have to do. What this article is saying, though, is that the judge issued limited remedies. So remedies in this case is the legal term for what Google has to do to make sure that the market remains competitive, so that other people in the market like Microsoft Edge, Apple Safari, so these are remedies for Google in terms of what they have to do to allow the market to be competitive. And of course the word monopoly, as it refers to a company that owns an overwhelming share of some sort of industry or sector. In this case, it was search engine, in that it was very, very difficult to compete with them. Shares of Google parent Alphabet jumped late Tuesday after the federal district court judge in the United States versus Google case released a seemingly limited set of remedies to mitigate the tech giant's monopoly around internet search. So this paragraph is very similar to our headline, sort of restates it. Federal district court judge. So this was federal. In this case means that it was filed in a federal court and not a state court. That's because the United States of America was suing Google. And so the federal district court is where these kinds of cases are heard in the United States. A seemingly limited set of remedies. Seemingly means it seems like. It's the adverb what appears to be. So limited set of remedies means a small number of things that Google has to do. Now the word mitigate, so if something is going to be very extreme, when you mitigate those circumstances, you make them not as bad. So in this case, making something not as bad as it could be is mitigating the tech giant's monopoly. Among his rulings, U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta said on Tuesday that the search giant wouldn't have to sell its Chrome web browser. In a closely watched part of the case, Google also won't be barred from paying Apple to make Google the default search provider on its devices. The court said it could still revisit that part of the ruling. Okay, so these two paragraphs are quite important. So this judge says that Google will not have to sell Chrome web browser. So one of the remedies that was sought by some of these search engine companies was that Chrome web browser already has Google search built in. It's such a big part of Google that it was monopolizing search. And so one of the ways that the United States government often remedies monopolies is to break them up into smaller pieces, make them independent companies. The judges said they don't have to do that. So investors thought that's a pretty significant ruling in terms of how big Alphabet can be, how big Google can be. Secondly, it says Google won't be barred from paying Apple to make Google the default search provider. So in this case, the word barred means to stop it from happening. If you bar something from happening, it means it cannot happen. This is saying they won't be barred. So in this case, they will allow Google to pay Apple to make it the default search provider for all Apple devices. Now, this is a big, significant issue as well, because Google already is the default engine on Chrome and many other browsers. Now, if it's the default search engine in Apple, that can, of course, be a pretty big deal. The last sentence, though, is important. The court said it could still revisit that part of the ruling. So revisit means to look at it again, to visit again. So what this is saying is court reserves the right to look at it again if it does create more of a monopoly. So the court has said, we will continue to monitor this situation. If something bad happens, we'll maybe issue a different ruling. Google will, however, be barred from entering exclusive contracts that relate to distribution of Google Search, Chrome, Google Assistant, and the Gemini app, the ruling added. The company will also have to share certain search index data with competitors, a ruling that could benefit upstart AI search providers like Perplexity and OpenAI. Alphabet stock rose 7.1% in after-hours trading following the ruling. So this is saying what Google will have to do. We just talked about the things that they don't have to do. But in this case, the remedies are they will be barred from entering exclusive contracts. Exclusive means only Google can provide the services. But the court has said you can't enter into any exclusive contracts. So Google cannot be the only provider, which allows these other people like Apple to enter into contracts with Google and someone else. So it gives them some flexibility as well. The company will have to share certain search index data. So in this case, Google collects a lot of data from every time you search using Google Search. What this ruling is saying is they're going to have to share some of that search index data with some of these AI companies that are competitors. The judge ruled in August 2024 that Google maintained a monopoly in general search services and general text advertising. Much has happened in the tech world over the course of last year since that decision. While Google remains the dominant search engine, the increasing popularity of generative artificial intelligence could be a game changer, the ruling said. So this is an important paragraph. So Google lost the ruling. They lost the court case in August of 2024, so about this time last year. And in these huge, massive cases, it usually takes about 6 to 8 months to about a year to sentence or to rule out, to find out what's going to happen. So once they ruled that Google was a monopoly, now they have to decide on what the fix is. How should they fix it? And because over the past year, AI became such a huge player in the search engine market, it sort of changed the playing field. It sort of changed what's happening with Google. Dominant search engine. So the word dominant here means the number one, the most powerful. And so in this case, they were the number one place that people went to search, of course. Generative artificial intelligence. So this is things like ChatGPT, all the large language models that can search for you, where you can go to Gemini or ChatGPT or Perplexity and type in a search question and it will search the web for you. So these types of artificial intelligence AI became a game changer. Game changer here means that they have changed the outlook of what's happening. Literally changed the game. So the judge will have to think about the ruling, think about what happens, because it's no longer the same situation as it was in 2024. So a game changer is something dramatic that happens that changes the situation in some way. Internet search traffic has been falling for much of 2025 as web surfers experiment with AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Perplexity to get answers to queries. In a key line of the 230-page ruling, a judge wrote, "The emergence of Gen AI changed the course of this case." Very clear, internet search traffic has been falling. So this indicates that when Google was a monopoly, that monopoly is not so big anymore. People just aren't searching using their browser anymore to get answers to queries. Queries is the English word for questions. The emergence of Gen AI. So emergence comes from the word to emerge. So it means to become. So it came out of somewhere, usually suddenly. So when something emerges, think like coming up out of a pool of water or suddenly appearing. So these AIs suddenly appeared in the world only a couple of years ago, and now all of a sudden they're taking a lot of that search engine traffic from Google. No witnesses at the liability trial testified that Gen AI products posed a near-term threat to GSEs. The very first witness at the remedies hearing, by contrast, placed Gen AI front and center as a nascent competitive threat, Meha wrote. So this sentence talks about how fast AI became so big. When the first monopoly hearing was being taken place, it's called the liability trial. So how much is Google liable for something? If you are liable for something, it means that it's your fault and you have to pay. At the liability trial, to see how much of a monopoly Google was, not one witness talked about Gen AI as a near-term threat. So 2 years ago when they were having the liability trial, Gen AI was just sort of this thing in the future. However, at the remedy trial, which happened after the liability trial, the very first witness talked about Gen AI as front and center as a nascent competitive threat. And nascent in this sentence means new and very similar to emerging. So a new growing threat. When they first had the hearing to decide whether Google was liable, no one talked about Gen AI. After Google was found guilty, and they were talking about what Google had to do about it, what Google had to pay, the remedies, all of a sudden Gen AI is a big topic of discussion because now AI is so big in terms of the search engine industry. Today's decision recognizes how much the industry has changed through the advent of AI, which is giving people so many more ways to find information, the statement read. Competition is intense, and people can easily choose the services that they want. This is Google's statement to the court in terms of where the world is now. And it talks about how much more AI is a part of it. Through the advent of AI, advent in this case is the creation, the growth of AI. Competition is intense and people can easily choose the services that they want. So part of being a monopoly is there is no competition. And Google is saying competition is intense. Google search is now competing with every one of these AI products. AI might be the biggest competitor to Google. that may have saved Google from being a monopoly. Okay, thanks for joining us for that fun article about Alphabet, about the Google search engine, and about how AI is transforming the entire industry. It seems that Google went from an incredible monopoly to now trying to catch up and be a competitor to AIs like Perplexity and ChatGPT. If you do enjoy this kind of content, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. It really helps us out. I appreciate you joining us for our business news breakdown, and we'll see you again in the next KuLAB.